Hello everyone and welcome. I'm excited to kick off today's presentation on vocabulary. On this first slide, we have the title of our session, which is simply vocabulary. We might also have a subtitle or some additional context, but for now, I just want to briefly share what you can expect. Today, we'll explore the importance of vocabulary, some key concepts, and practical ways to enhance your language skills. I'll keep it short and engaging, so let's get started. Let's move on to slide 2, which covers some important aspects of vocabulary building. We start with the importance of understanding different types of words that sound or look similar, but have different meanings, like homonyms, homophones, and homographs. Recognizing these can significantly improve our comprehension and usage of language. Next, we'll look at a few examples of one-word substitutions. These are useful because they allow us to express ideas more precisely and concisely, making our communication clearer and more effective. Then, we'll touch upon phrases. Knowing common phrases helps in grasping the context and nuances of language, which is essential for both understanding and speaking fluently. We'll also explore the degree of knowledge. This involves understanding how well someone knows a particular word or concept, which is key to effective learning and usage. Finally, we'll conclude with a thank you, but remember, throughout this presentation, the core message is the importance of developing a rich vocabulary to enhance our communication skills and confidence. Let's talk about vocabulary. It's commonly defined as all the words a person knows and uses. But understanding a word isn't just about recognizing it or being able to say it. There's actually more to it. When we think about how well someone knows a word, there are different aspects involved. These aspects help us measure the depth of someone's word knowledge, which is really important for understanding language development. Throughout this presentation, we'll explore these different facets, so you can see how vocabulary isn't just a simple list, but a complex and vital part of language mastery. Linguistic vocabulary is often seen as the same as thinking vocabulary. Wilkins in 1972 famously said, "Without grammar, very little can be conveyed. Without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed." This highlights how essential vocabulary is to effective communication. When we talk about vocabulary size, research shows it's directly linked to reading comprehension. The more words we know, the better we understand what we read. Additionally, others often judge us based on our vocabulary. It's a reflection of our knowledge and education. An extensive vocabulary also helps us express ourselves more clearly and communicate more effectively. So, throughout this presentation, we're emphasizing how vital building a strong vocabulary is, not just for reading and writing, but for overall thinking and interaction. It's truly a cornerstone of language mastery and personal growth. On this slide, we're exploring the concept of how we understand and use words, which falls under what we call the receptive, productive distinction. Basically, this refers to the range of abilities people have with words, often described as degrees of knowledge. What does that mean? Well, it indicates that a word doesn't just suddenly become part of someone's vocabulary all at once. Instead, it gradually enters over time as we learn different aspects of that word, like its meaning, how it's used, and its nuances. We can think of these stages as varying levels of familiarity. For example, at one end, a person might recognize a word just from hearing it in context or tone of voice, even if they can't define it. That's what we see in stage 3. Then, at a slightly deeper level, someone might have heard the word before but still can't quite define it. This is stage 2. On the other hand, if someone can understand the general or intended meaning, but can't clearly explain it, that's a different level of understanding. And finally, at the highest level, someone can use the word actively and explain it clearly. That's true productive knowledge. Understanding these stages helps us see that vocabulary development is a process, and it can be gradual. Recognizing where someone is on this spectrum can really inform how we teach and support language learning. Let's take a closer look at some important one-word substitutions. First, we have he uppdiglet enus, which means something that is no longer in use. For example, old tools or outdated practices often fall into this category. Next is he samadhilake enus, or epitaph, which refers to the words engraved on a tombstone. It's a way to remember someone who has passed away. Moving on, he shati nus he kriya enus he vigyan enus is physiology, the scientific study of how the body functions. It helps us understand how our organs and systems work together. Then we have hienetic enus, which describes someone or something that is not concerned with what is right or wrong, essentially amoral. Following that is he look enus he hip enus he cut enus, meaning surreptitious or done in a sneaky, secretive way. It's often used when describing actions done to avoid detection. Next, he anubhui enus refers to a veteran, someone with a lot of experience in a particular occupation or field. And finally, he divalia enus describes someone who is insolvent, meaning they are unable to pay their debts. These examples highlight how one word can often replace a phrase or a longer explanation, making our language more precise and efficient. All of these words are useful in different contexts, especially when we want to communicate clearly and concisely. On this slide, we're looking at some common examples of synonyms in English. First, I want to highlight that a synonym is a word that has the same or very similar meaning to another word. When we talk about words being synonymous, we're referring to that relationship. The state of being a synonym is called synonymy. For example, the words big and large are synonyms because they both describe something of considerable size. Similarly, quickly and speedily are synonyms for describing something done in a fast manner. These are all adjectives or adverbs, and it's important to note that synonyms can belong to any part of speech, nouns, verbs, adjectives, prepositions, or adverbs, as long as both words are of the same part of speech. Now, consider the verbs buy and purchase. They are synonyms because they both mean to acquire something, usually in exchange for payment. Recognizing synonyms helps us expand our vocabulary and choose words more precisely for different contexts. As we move forward, keep in mind that understanding synonyms is also key to grasping the concept of antonyms, which are words with opposite meanings. This helps us see the full picture of how words relate to each other in language. Let's take a look at some words that describe different qualities and their synonyms. First, we have words like antiquated, ancient, obsolete, and extinct. These all relate to things that are no longer in use or out of date. Think of them as describing something old or outdated. Moving on, we see words like duplicity and falseness. These words describe dishonesty or deception, which can be important in understanding character or intention. Next, there are words associated with positive feelings, content, joyful, mirthful, and upbeat. These all convey happiness and a lively, cheerful mood. Similarly, the word happy stands alone, but shares the same general feeling of well-being and joy. Then we have hypocrisy, which highlights a disconnect between what someone claims and what they actually do, an important concept in discussions about honesty and integrity. Following that, we see words like just, objective, impartial, and unbiased. These emphasize fairness and neutrality in judgment or decision-making. The next pair, confuse and deceive, points to actions that cause misunderstanding or trickery. Again, related to honesty, but in a different context. We also have miscellaneous words like diligent, determined, and industrious, which describe hardworking qualities. Humorous, comical, hilarious, and hysterical all relate to laughter and entertainment, emphasizing humor's role in communication. For attractive, pretty, lovely, and stunning, these words highlight beauty and appeal. Finally, the slide presents examples of adjectives and their synonyms, helping us see how different words can convey similar meanings, but with subtle nuances. Overall, these words enrich our vocabulary and help us express ideas more precisely, especially when discussing qualities, emotions, or judgments. An antonym is a word that has the opposite meaning of another word. It refers to a word that is completely different from another one. For example, if we think of the word hot, its antonym would be cold. Understanding antonyms helps us see the relationships between words and expand our vocabulary. Now, an interesting point to remember is that the opposite of an antonym is actually a synonym. That might sound a bit confusing at first, but think of it this way. When you look for the opposite of an antonym, you're essentially finding a word that means the same thing as the original. For instance, the antonym of happy is sad, but the opposite of sad is happy again, which is a synonym of the original word. Connecting this to the overall theme of language and word relationships, recognizing antonyms and their counterparts helps us communicate more precisely and understand nuances in meaning. It also enriches our language skills and makes our conversations more vibrant. Let's look at some examples of relational antonyms. These include pairs like predator and prey, buy and sell, doctor and patient, and husband and wife. These pairs are often considered a subcategory of complementary antonyms because they describe relationships where one is typically associated with the other. Now, moving on to the concept of complementary antonyms. These are pairs where only one of two options can be true at a time. For instance, day and night, off and on, dead and alive, push and pull, man and woman. You can't have both at once. It's an either-or situation. Next, we have graded antonyms. These deal with levels or degrees of a certain quality. For example, if something isn't good, it might still not be bad. It could be okay or mediocre. So these antonyms help us understand the spectrum between two extremes. To summarize, there are three main categories of antonyms we should keep in mind: relational, complementary, and graded. Each plays a unique role in how we understand and use language, especially when contrasting concepts or describing relationships. Recognizing these categories helps us communicate more precisely and understand the nuances in meaning. An idiom is a fascinating aspect of language because it's a combination of words that carries a figurative meaning, which is based on how it's commonly used. When we hear an idiom, we can't just interpret it literally. Instead, we need to understand the phrase as a whole. It's a phrase where the words together actually have a meaning that's different from what you'd find if you looked up each word in the dictionary. The key here is that the figurative meaning is separate from, and often quite different from, the literal meaning. Did you know there are estimated to be around 25,000 idiomatic expressions in the English language alone? That's a huge number, highlighting just how rich and expressive idioms are in our everyday communication. This shows how idioms add color and depth to language, making conversations more engaging and sometimes more nuanced. Understanding idioms is essential for truly grasping the richness of English, especially as we connect this to the broader theme of language and communication skills. Now, let's take a look at some common idiomatic phrases and expressions that you might hear in everyday conversation. First up, we have speak of the devil. This is a fun one. It's used when the person you've just been talking about suddenly shows up. It's a playful way to acknowledge that coincidence. Next, we have killed two birds with one stone, which means you can accomplish two things at the same time with a single effort. It's a great way to emphasize efficiency. Moving on, once in a blue moon describes something that happens very rarely, so it's perfect for highlighting rare events or occurrences. Then there, see eye to eye, which means that two or more people agree on something. It's useful when discussing consensus or shared opinions. Another common phrase is hear it on the grapevine, meaning you've heard a rumor or gossip about something or someone. It captures how rumors spread informally. And finally, miss the boat refers to missing an opportunity or chance. So if someone says they missed the boat, they missed their shot at something important. These expressions are not only useful in conversation, but also add color and nuance to our language. Understanding these idioms helps us connect better with native speakers and grasp cultural nuances more easily. A phrase is essentially a group of related words that work together as a single part of speech. Think of it as a small unit within a sentence, where the words are connected and function as one. It can be just a single word or a group of words that form a constituent, meaning they act as a single unit in the sentence's structure. Now, in terms of grammatical hierarchy, phrases are lower than clauses, which are larger units. Certain types of phrases have specific names, and these names depend on the main word that begins or governs the group. For example, if the phrase starts with a noun, it's called a noun phrase. If it starts with a verb, then it's a verb phrase. Other common types include prepositional phrases, infinitive phrases, participle phrases, gerund phrases, and absolute phrases. Understanding these different types of phrases helps us see how sentences are built and how words relate to each other within the larger structure. This concept ties back to the overall theme of understanding sentence construction and the roles that different groups of words play. Let's start by looking at the first point. When I see on equals preposition, time equals noun, I think about how prepositions like on are used to connect nouns indicating time or location. For example, on time means arriving punctually. It's a simple phrase but very important in everyday communication. Next, we have the sentence, his brow knitted in frustration. This vividly shows an emotional reaction. When someone is frustrated, their brow often furrows or knits. It's a great example of how descriptive language can convey feelings. Moving to the phrase on time, which we just discussed, it emphasizes punctuality, being there when expected. It's a key concept, especially in professional or everyday contexts where timeliness matters. Now, let's consider the real-world example of washing our dog Gizmo. As anyone who's done it knows, it requires strong arms to hold that squirming, unhappy puppy in the tub. It's a good illustration of a task that demands patience and strength, and it connects to the theme of handling challenging situations. Next, the phrase had cleaned shows how the past perfect tense is formed, using had plus the past participle of clean. It's often used to describe an action completed before another past action. This helps us understand the sequence of events more clearly. Finally, we look at the phrase, the shoplifted pair of jeans. Here, pair is a noun, and the shoplifted of jeans acts as a modifier that specifies which pair. It highlights how modifiers give us more detail and clarity about the noun they describe, which is essential for precise communication. By understanding these concepts, we see how language structure enhances our ability to express time, emotions, and details effectively. Let's take a closer look at some words that start with homo. As I mentioned earlier, homo means same, so these words are all related to the idea of sameness. For example, homonym refers to words that sound the same or are spelled the same but have different meanings. Homophone relates to words that sound alike, like bear and bear. And homograph involves words that look similar in written form. Now, what do all of these words have in common? They all deal with the concept of sameness, whether it's sounds, spellings, or meanings. This connection is key because it helps us understand how language can be both playful and confusing at the same time. Recognizing these patterns can improve our comprehension and communication. So, in summary, homonyms, homophones, and homographs are all about words that share some aspect of sameness, either in pronunciation or spelling, and understanding these helps us become more precise and aware in our language use. Let's take a closer look at writing, specifically homographs, homophones, and homonyms, which can sometimes be confusing but are really interesting once you understand them. Homographs are words that are spelled the same, but they have different sounds and meanings. For example, think of the word saw. It can mean a tool for cutting or the past tense of see, or bass, which can refer to a low sound or a type of fish. These words look the same on paper but can be pronounced differently depending on their meaning. Now, moving on to homophones, these are words that sound exactly the same but are spelled differently and have different meanings. For instance, weak and weak sound alike, but one is a period of time and the other describes a lack of strength. Or see and see, which sound identical but refer to different things entirely. Remember, homophones are all about the sound. Finally, homonyms are a bit of a special case. These words sound the same and are spelled the same, but they have different meanings. Think of bat. It can be a flying mammal or a piece of sports equipment. Or light, which can mean not heavy or illumination. And tie, which can be a piece of clothing or a draw in a game. Understanding the differences among homographs, homophones, and homonyms helps us improve our reading, writing, and communication skills. It's all about recognizing context clues to figure out which meaning is intended. These concepts are key to mastering the nuances of the English language and making our writing clearer and more precise. Let's take a moment to look at how vocabulary drills play a crucial role in language learning. They help students learn how to approach new words with confidence and become more comfortable overall. By practicing these drills, students develop strategies for understanding unfamiliar words quickly and effectively. Now, one of the most powerful tools we have is understanding Latin and Greek roots. These roots can expand students' vocabularies exponentially because many English words are built from them. Learning these roots allows students to decode new words and grasp their meanings more easily, which is a huge advantage. Another important aspect is personal words. Encouraging students to develop their own bank of interesting words makes learning more meaningful and memorable. When students choose words that resonate with them personally, they are more likely to remember and use these words in their daily lives. Finally, making connections is key. When students relate new words to their own experiences or other words they know, they build personal word power. This not only improves their vocabulary, but also boosts their confidence in using language creatively and effectively. All these strategies, vocabulary drills, understanding roots, personal word banks, and making connections, align perfectly with our overall goal: empowering students to become more proficient, confident, and engaged language users.